Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement. On today's video, it's another midweek mini mail call. I know some of you pointed out that they're definitely not mini and I should drop it, but I do have to point out one thing, that I title it that before I open up the mail call packages. When you see me opening stuff on camera, it's actually the first time I'm opening it, so I have no idea if what I'm going to open is a quick mail call item or a really in-depth one, like that box that Bill sent me full of all that pet stuff on the last video. So anyways, let's get right to it. All right, we have a package here that says do not bend, and it comes from Robert in Connecticut. This is the same Robert that sent in those Tandy 1000 EX/HX RAM expansion cards. You've seen his stuff on this channel a few times, and I think he sent me something here, probably as a little bit of a thank you for helping him out with that project. Let's open this up. I actually, for one, swapped out the blade on my knife. A couple people pointed out that it looked like I was cutting into things and really struggling, and it was true. That was a very dull blade, so now it cuts in like butter. Aha, what's this? Whew, I'm sweating a little bit. It's a bit warm today in Portland while I shoot this video, so of course I'm drinking my sugar-free Tang. Today I have strawberry sugar-free Tang, and as usual, it's from Mexico, and yeah, I had a full glass and I've already drank most of it because I'm kind of warm down here under the studio lights. Let me have another sip. Oh yeah, you know, that is shockingly good. Like really, it doesn't taste anything like, say, Kool-Aid or other fake strawberry flavors. It really almost tastes like it's made with real strawberries. And I know it's definitely not, but it's a pretty darn good flavor. Okay, so what's this here? This is a motherboard of some kind. Whoa. Okay, wow. This looks like an Amiga 2000 motherboard. And sure enough, Amiga 2000 Remake Rev 1.85. I'm reading off the back here. Based on the Amiga B2000 Rev 6.2, reverse engineered by Floppy 2009. So that looks pretty amazing. It looks like it survived shipping okay. It's a little bit bent, but nothing that screwing it into a computer wouldn't fix. Okay, let's check out what this is here. Robert has sent me a big assortment of Commodore ICs. Now, I think this is just some random stuff that he had. We'll have to take a closer look in a second. Very cool. Let's take a look at that on the bench. All right, so this is the Amiga 2000 motherboard, and I'm trying to get it on camera where it doesn't have glare, but that's easier said than done. This is a large PCB, and I have overhead lights that cause a lot of glare. Not having a lot of luck. It turned off some of the overhead lights. So like I said already, this is an Amiga 2000 replacement motherboard based on the Amiga 2000 revision 6.2. It's a rather large PCB, but it's fantastic that this exists because one of the problems with the Amiga 2000 is the NiCad battery sits down here next to the processor. And on a lot of them, this leaks pretty badly and it can often damage the motherboard in this area. And since it's right by the processor, pretty much prevents the computer from working properly. So it's pretty awesome that this project exists to make this, because if worst case scenario, you have a badly damaged 2000, or say there's a big crack in the motherboard, you could potentially revive your computer by transferring the components over onto this motherboard. So you see here a little bit about the project, Amiga 2000 Remake Rev 1.8.5, based on the Amiga B2000 Rev 6.2, reverse engineered by Floppy 209 or 209. This is the section where the battery normally is, and the designer has gone ahead and installed a CR20-32 battery holder. I'll have to go do a little bit of reading to see if there's a diode installed, because the original one is an iCAD and it does charge, and it's possible that this particular one needs an ML2032, which is a rechargeable type, because there's no diode. So I don't know, I'll have to go read up about this, but pretty neat that that change has been made. Down in the corner here, they've kept the Commodore copyright and other information like B2000CR. I assume that this information here is on the original motherboard as well. The quality of everything on here is just amazing. In fact, I love this one little spot up here. If I kind of pan the camera up enough, here's a little floppy drive that says 209 in it after the designer of this reverse engineered board. I take it this is just a very standard reproduction of the original 2000 motherboard, which if you haven't seen, you might be wondering what's going on here. So these are Zorro 2 slots. These are the Amiga expansion slots. This one here is, I think, called the PDS slot or the processor direct slot. You could plug an accelerator into this that would take the regular 68000, which is running at a little bit under 8 megahertz, out, and it would allow you to run a much faster processor up to a 68040 or maybe even a 68060. And then what's weird is you see up here some extra slots, and what these are ISA slots. Now those are powered by the motherboard, so there's power, but none of the digital signaling is actually connected to anything on the Amiga side. And the whole design of those slots is you are supposed to use what's called a bridge card. And it basically gives you IBM PC compatibility on your Amiga. And the PC side of that bridge card is connected to these ISA slots, allowing you to plug in things like a VGA card or a network card or other ISA accessories. And what we see here is the back side of the board. There's no silk screen on here, but of course it looks absolutely fantastic. It's just a beautiful board, and it's really nice to see these types of reproductions happening these days. There will probably be people asking me to build one of these up. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the parts to build one of these because you need things like these Zorro slots and the PDS slot and all these other components like ISA slots. It's really not that easy to get these parts anymore. They might exist, but they're going to be kind of expensive. And I am lucky enough to have a working Amiga 2000 right now, so there is no reason for me to actually build this up. But I think because this looks so beautiful, I'm going to put this up on the wall just like those Commodore 64 replica boards that I recently got in a mail call. Here we are in the man cave, which is another room in my basement. I typically watch TV down here, and I have a little display on the wall of cool motherboards, and the Amiga 2000 motherboard is now on the wall here, along with the two Commodore 64 motherboards, which just look so cool, plus a couple other random things, an old wire-wrapped card from like an S100 bus machine, and a 3D6 RAM expansion card, another old PC motherboard, and an analog board. I love how this looks down here, especially compared to the framed artwork on the wall. It just adds a little bit of a varied texture to the room. And yes, in case anyone is wondering, that is me and a Macintosh Plus. This was an advertisement my father did for me back in Canada when I was a kid for the North American Free Trade Agreement, when that was first being worked on by the various governments of North America. And this was an ad that ran in the newspaper, and it had some captions and whatnot that went with it. That's me with this Mac Plus, which I still have. This was my father's computer at the time, and he was a graphic designer. And I have that Mac Plus here in the digital basement, and yes, it absolutely works. All right, so these are the ICs that Robert sent. So let's take a closer look at what these are. All right, so on the left here, 6522s. These are what? I think a CIA or PIA, typically used in the VIC-20 for the keyboard and stuff like that. Also the PET, if I am not mistaken, and definitely the 1541 disk drive. These are not compatible with the Commodore 64, though. Those use 6526s, which are definitely getting a little harder to find these days. Here we have 6502, another 6502A, and another A. And then we have three of these ICs here, which are 6560s. I wasn't exactly sure what these were right off the bat, but I did a quick Google search, and it looks like they are 6550 VIC chips. So this is the NTSC video and sound chip from a Commodore VIC-20. Very helpful because I'm not sure I actually have any spares of these, and I haven't run across a bad one in a VIC-20 yet, but you never know. But definitely 6502s I'm running low on. If you remember some of my 1541 troubleshooting videos, I ended up having a couple of these in my stash of parts that ended up being bad. Like I put it on the disk drive and it still wasn't working. It turned out that that processor I had in my stock was bad. So it's always nice to have more of these original parts. As you see, they're all from 1983. So they're pretty old, as are all of these, 1983, 83, 83, and a 182 of this VIC-2 chip. All right, next up, these ICs, 901486-01. 1, 2, 3 of those. There's a -06, another -06, and -06. Well, these 06 variants here are the kernel ROM from the VIC-20. So let's just see what this -01 variant is. It might also be a kernel, and perhaps it's just like a different version. Oh, no, not at all. These are the basic ROMs from the VIC-20. All right, and these three ICs are 901460-03s. Well, I'm assuming, going off the theme here, that these are probably VIC-20 related. And yes, on my phone, I see that they are the character ROMs, and that just leaves these 6 ICs here. So AMD 9128-20s, 9128s. This is a 9128-15, 9128-15. These are Fujitsu parts. And then we have 4216s. I bet you these are probably SRAM chips. And that is correct. This is a 2048 by 8 SRAM, both of these. And I'm assuming these are going to be as well because they have basically the same part number. And don't worry, I am writing on these with a Sharpie, and people are going to say, ooh, that's making a mess of those chips. But actually, if you take 99% isopropyl alcohol, that gets Sharpie right off these chips. So it's easy to clean these off if I want to make the computer look good again. And the last 2 chips are Matsushita or Panasonic MN4216s, and these are SRAM chips as well. So all 6 of these ICs are SRAMs, and that's very handy because I actually don't have any of these SRAM chips in stock. I wouldn't be surprised if these are what's used inside of VIC-20, to be honest. It uses static RAM for its RAM as opposed to dynamic RAM, which requires refreshing. It's a simpler design when you use SRAM, but this stuff does cost more. Okay, I want to test some of these chips out, so I broke out a VIC-20 motherboard that I had in a box. This definitely works, but it has the 6522s, which I can test. There's the 6502, there are the 3 ROM chips, and there's the VIC-2. I was under the impression perhaps that these SRAMs were used on the VIC-20, but at least on this VIC-20, it is using regular 2114 SRAM chips. So I can't test those on here, not to mention these are soldered anyways. But all the other chips that are on here, these larger ones, are socketed, so I can do a quick test. Now, this is something that people may not have known. I have a power supply for this VIC-20. It uses the 2-pin type, 9 volts AC, different than the Commodore 64 one, which I always have a 64 power supply on my bench. But to power this thing, I didn't want to go and fish out the 2-pin power supply. It's in a box with another original complete VIC-20, in an original box, and it's stored away. I don't feel like going and fishing that out. So a quick and easy trick is to just use your bench power supply. I have a couple clip leads plugged into the 2 leads. Up here I have my bench power supplies. I have 2. I'm going to be using the one on the left. I have it set for 11 volts. And if I turn it off and we hit review, I have it at 2 amps. Now I'm going to be powering it with DC, which is actually fine because what happens with this is it takes the AC from the 9 volts, it rectifies it, that turns it into DC, and then it sends it through a voltage regulator here, a 5-volt regulator. And that's this large metal thing as a heat sink for the voltage regulator underneath here. This all gets very hot. So what happens if you feed DC in, it just goes through the bridge rectifier, which drops it like a volt or a volt and a bit, and then it goes to the voltage regulator. It's already DC, so it just gets regulated down to 5 volts. On this computer, doing that is okay, because all that's going to happen is anything that uses 9 volts AC, which is external to this, and that would be like the cassette drive that plugs into the cassette port. I think that's using 9 volts AC, maybe. I don't know. Those voltages are available on the cassette port and probably the user port. So those things aren't going to work. But all of the things that just run on 5 volts DC will work fine when you power it this way. Okay, let's test this out. I have the RetroTink connected. I have the composite video cable going through that. This is plugged in the power supply, which is on, and I'll hit the power switch. There we go. We have a working VIC-20, and I'm running this off 11 volts. In case anyone's interested, right now in this configuration, it is drawing about 1.43 amps, and that's a decent amount. So if you want to run your VIC-20 off a regular 12-volt power supply, you can do so off a 2-amp one, and it will work. Just remember, keep in mind, some of the accessories may not work correctly, but if you're just trying to use a VIC-20 like this, you can do that. Okay, let's get the old ZIF64 out here, and I want to use the keyboard from this to test the VIC-20. Yes, the Commodore 64 and the VIC-20 keyboard are completely interchangeable and work without any differences in them. One thing really quickly to point out, this lid on this 64 here is actually the one I got in the last mail call that had that big chunk broken out on it. I took the suggestion of several commenters and I used some bits of ABS plastic. It's going to be a little bit hard to see underneath the keyboard here, and acetone, which is nail polish cleaner, 100% pure acetone, and it welds the plastic together. So I used a piece of sticky tape on the top here, and I held the piece correctly, and I dripped a bunch of acetone onto the crack, and I put these little pieces of an old DSL modem, and now it's holding great. You can just make out the crack that goes here. It goes from there to about there, but the keyboard is screwed into this, and it's solid. So that was a great fix. I appreciate the suggestion everyone made about that, and I have to say, it looks perfect. So this top is now going to be the one for my ZIF-64. It has broken hinges, but I actually don't care because I'm constantly taking it on and off anyways, so it doesn't need to be properly attached. So this is good enough, and that was a great fix. All right, so this is still stock with the original chips. I'm going to turn this on and just make sure the keyboard is working. Yes, it is working fine. So I'm going to use the 6522 that drives the keyboard as the socket for testing the ones that Robert sent me here, and then I can switch the VIC and the processor and these ROM chips, and I can just do that one at a time, and then I can draw check marks on these so I know if they work or not. Oh, taking out the 6522, that came out pretty difficult. I used my Wiha chip lifter here. I assume it's been in there for a very long time, and that's why it's hard to get out. So a little Deoxit in that socket will make it easier to get these test chips in and out of here. And in case you hadn't seen, I'm using Deoxit in these little squeeze bottles because my original can, the spray mechanism broke because the can fell over. They have a real design flaw where if you drop them on their top, they seem to break a lot and then Deoxit drips everywhere. So I transferred any of the extra Deoxit into these little squeeze bottles, which allows me to strategically apply it wherever I need it. I wonder if there's a diagnostic cartridge for the VIC-20. I haven't actually looked for one, but I don't even have a multi-cart, so there'd really be no way for me to use it unless there was one that replaced the basic ROM. Now these are all the chips I just took out of the computer. I'm going to write check marks on these so I know that these are good. And let's start testing these chips. Okay, the first set of chips are in, but before I turn this on, I noticed that one of the 6526s seems reversed from the other one. So I'm just going to pop this back out again and double check, and I have that in upside down. So I'm glad I didn't just turn that on without paying attention. Yeah, the notches at the top, as is the silk screen. All of these chips are facing the same direction, but the processor is facing that way, as is the VIC, and yet these ICs here are facing that way. So let me, now I'm second guessing myself. Let me pull the processor out again. Yeah, that's in the right way. Oh, these sockets are really difficult to get chips in and out of. Even with the Deoxit, they're hard. Okay, so everything should be good to go. Here we go. Let's turn this on. Okay, and it's working now. Weird is the color. Yeah, that doesn't look good. Okay, so, you know, clearly it's working, but we're getting this flickering thing going on. So let's just, what's going on? Maybe that's just a bad connection. Let me swap the VIC chip with a different VIC chip. Well, in fact, I'll just put the original one back in. Original VIC chip, and then it was in this machine. Okay, and that looks much better. The color here is a bit different. So this color typically should be cyan, which is sort of a green-blue color. This is more on just a light blue color, and this is the original one that's in this machine. So that's a bit unusual. Let's go back to this VIC chip, make sure all the pins are good. They are. There are no bent pins. Pop this one back in. This is the one that was flickering. And let's see if we still have that particular problem. We do. So it's working. Like I said, this looks a lot more like the cyan color, but we're definitely getting glitching going on. So I think this chip is marginal. I'm just going to go through and try the other VIC chips while I'm at it instead of swapping all the chips over. Let's just pop that one in there. And that one is working, and like this is a much more cyan looking color, and look, no glitching. So this one looks good. In case anyone was wondering, this one with the blue dot is my original one that has the not so cyan. It's a 6560-101, and this is a 6560-101 as well. So they both have the same numbers, but the one that is not very cyan is built in Korea, and the one that is, that I just tried that works good, built in Hong Kong. And this glitchy one is also Hong Kong. One more 6560 to test out. And let's take a look. What's going to happen? Okay, there we go. It's working well. It's also cyan, which is correct. So I guess the chip that I had in here is just problematic. This one looks good. Okay, so I know that the chips that are in here are all testing good, so I will draw check marks on all of them. Next up, 6502 testing. So one of the ones that Robert sent me works well. Here's the second one. That looks great. I know it's not comprehensive testing here, right? Like there could be other issues, but it's at least it boots the computer, so the processor mostly is executing correctly. Some of these, like this 6502, is definitely a desolder. The legs are short and they're kind of mangled a little bit. So Hans had sent me that pin straightener, which you might have noticed me using in the last mail call video. But the thing is, it works generally well, but when the pins are kind of mangled at the ends, like they're straight and then there's a little bit of mangling, it doesn't really help with that. I still have to use my needle nose. Now these needle nose, by the way, with these curved tip, they're flat. They don't have the grooves in there, so it doesn't groove these legs as I grip them and bend them into shape. These generally work really well for this purpose. Okay, black screen. I think I didn't get this in the socket all the way, so I'm not gonna blame the chip immediately. Yeah, the pins are just a little mangled, so just gotta get this in a little better. There we go. Push down really hard. Try again. Black screen, okay. So we have a dead processor. That's a bummer. 6502A, no good. Just checking that none of the pins are bent over, and they are not. They are all looking good. Let's pop one of these other ones in here, make sure we get the computer working again. And there we go. Whoa, we're getting the glitching. That's weird that that was glitching because this was not the glitching VIC chip. So maybe this one that I wrote glitch on doesn't really have a fault. I wonder if the voltage is too low because of the way I'm driving this. Let's take a quick look at the 5 volts. No, we're getting 4.927 volts, which is generally okay. Actually, look at this. Is it me or this color changing a little bit? Maybe this clock generator is a little bit out of alignment or something. It's definitely not glitching any longer either. I'm adjusting the voltage on my bench power supply just to see if there's any visible difference in the picture, and there really isn't. I have it down at 9.5 volts. Let's just check the voltage now. See what we're getting. 4.84. So it's a little low because I'm running this at a little bit over 9 volts. But if I turn this up to 10, now I'm getting 4.925 again. And let's just turn this up to 12. And we're still at 4.928. It's a little bit higher, but ultimately it looks like you could run this down all the way to 10 volts and still be getting good voltage regulation. And I gotta say one thing about running it, yep, that's still good. Running it at 10 volts, it's pulling 1.33 amps, is this whole heatsink assembly will not get that hot. Now, it really looks like to me, the color has changed a little bit, and this could be a side effect of the RetroTink. Well, let's turn this back on again. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe it's just my eyes. It looks fine. I'm not seeing the glitching anymore. So who knows? Okay, so definitely that one processor is bad. I grabbed the glitching VIC chip. Let's just pop this one back in here one more time. Let's see if that is still doing the glitching or what. Well, that looks really good actually. And there's definitely no more glitching. So that's a bit weird. Oh no, there we go. It's starting to glitch. I see a little bit of weird patterns in here and then the color's changing. Yeah, okay. So I'll just leave this one in here because it's working good enough and it's glitching. Okay, out with the ROM set and in with another set of ROMs. I'll change all 3. You may be noticing the chip remover I'm using. I have a link to this in my description. In North America, it's really easy to get this from Amazon, but in Europe, it's very hard to find this. Apparently, it's really only sold in the US and shipping to Europe is very expensive. There was sort of a conversation with Jan Bita and Sven and some other people about how hard it is to find these. But if you're in North America and you want one of these, just check the link in my description and you can get one for yourself. The chip puller works really well, except for the fact that if the chip is very stuck in the socket, like it's been like this computer, the chips hadn't been out in a very long time, I really recommend you pull the chip out first with a tool like this Wiha chip lifter. I think I have a link to this in my description as well. What this is kind of like a flat blade screwdriver, but the end is bent up. So when you're getting under the chip, you're not likely to accidentally scratch the PCB, which you can do accidentally with a flat blade. But honestly, a flat blade works fine if you're just careful. You're totally fine with that. But I like this tool. It works well for me. But this gets chips out when they're really stuck in there. But when you're also really tight conditions, like around this VIC chip, which has an RF shield, something like this, which is my O-ring pick with a curved tip. This is the same one I use for desoldering chips. It's great because you can get it between legs and you can leverage the chip out as well, where this is not really possible because of this RF shield. And this is really not going to work because of the chip is very much stuck in there. This is made out of plastic. This silver part is plastic. And while these black parts here are metal, I don't recommend trying to use this on the chip if it's very stuck in. You will probably break this tool. Okay, new ROM set is in, and we'll power this up. I drew on the board 03, 01, and 06, so I could tell which sockets the ROMs go into. And hey, look at that, it booted right up. So we have 3 more good ROMs here. Check, check, and check. Now that I put Deoxit in these sockets, these chips come out relatively easily, but even that, like that wasn't super easy. You just have to kind of leverage it out a little bit. Oh, I left it behind. There we go. But where this really does come in handy is once the chip that's in an RF shield area like this is hard to get out, this does fit in there and pulls it right out. So it's really easy for that type of thing. Okay, the last ROM set, we have the 01 chip there. We have the 06 ROM chip there, and we have the 03 ROM right here. Oh yes, great. Another working ROM set. Keyboard works well, so I'm going to check these off. Check, check, check. And what that leaves us with is these 6522s. Still have 5 of them to go. I have 1 in here now, and I am going to try these. It looks like that Robert took apart 3 VIC-20s because each one has 2 of these, so that would give a total of 6, and then there were 3 of all the other things, except for these SRAMs. I'm not sure where these came from. Maybe these SRAM chips are used on a different motherboard revision of the VIC-20, 2 on each, 2 of them at a time. So if you know about that, please let me know in the comment section. Okay, this one's been desoldered from motherboard. The pins are straight, except for the area end, they're kinked up. So I'll just use my needle nose to go through and straighten these out. Okay, so this 6526, no flashing cursor, which is a sign that it is bad. So I'm just gonna pop this out really quick, make sure that I didn't bend a pin putting it into the motherboard because, okay, see, I can't get it out with this tool. Kind of pulled it out partially. I'll use my chip lifter for the rest. All of the legs are good. None are bent whatsoever. I'm going to put it in one more time just in case it wasn't making good contact or whatever, something was wrong. It's always good to double check. Yep, nothing, dead. Okay, bad chip. Next 6522, power it up. And it's good. Of course, the glitching's in there, but that's okay. I have the glitching VIC chip in there. Keyboard appears to be working pretty well, though. Oh, switched it. There we go. You can switch uppercase, lowercase, of course. Check mark. Okay, here's the next one. Yep, that looks good. This all seems normal. I was sort of hitting the keyboard, hence all that junk there. There's that glitching. Check mark. Here's the next one. So far, so good. We got a flashing cursor. Shift lock is on, hence the characters. Yeah, I'm just going to say that one looks good. And finally, the last 6526. Oh no, another one that's dead. Pop this one out. This one was not desoldered from a board, so the pins are all perfect. Absolutely perfect. This chip just looks brand spanking new. All right, back in there again, and let's try one more time. Dead as a doornail. Darn it, too bad 6522s. So thank you, Robert, very much for sending me these VIC-20 chips. I didn't test these SRAMs. I don't have an easy way to test those right now. Almost all these chips worked flawlessly, except for these 3, these 2 6526s and 1 6502. So you know what that means. Take my dead parts, and these go into this bin of dead ICs. Look at all of those. And of course, thanks for that Amiga 2000 motherboard, which is up in the man cave on the wall, looking amazing. Well, that's going to be it for this Commodore-centric mini mail call video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. But of course, if you didn't, you know what to do. You can hit that thumbs down button. Put your comments and suggestions in the comment section below, and hit that subscribe button if you want to subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. Thanks very much for watching. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.